He has ruled Turkey for 12 years. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, his country's most powerful leader since Ataturk himself. And if there was a touch of the Colonel Gaddafi about him at today's celebrations in Ankara, well, millions of Turks fear that that is what he is becoming.
Why would a president would say Twitter is a headache and social media is a menace? Why in a democratic country?
He hates criticism. I mean, as every dictator is.
He's not a dictator, he's elected.
He is elected dictator.
Take a boat trip through Istanbul and you see the economic legacy of the Erdoğan years. An unprecedented building boom dwarfing the waterside Ottoman palace where Ataturk died over 70 years ago. An environmental calamity to some, but with growth at one point hitting 9% a year, 70 million Turks have never been richer. And many of them are much more comfortable in their own skin. Mr. Erdoğan allowing observant Muslims to get involved in politics and dress the way they want, even if it enrages Turkey's traditional secular elite. Then the economy began to slow, and Mr. Erdoğan accused foreigners of being behind a plot to topple him. State institutions were purged of potential enemies, and the internet was increasingly blocked. Along with a massive sense of humour failure, an authoritarian streak had begun to emerge. In 2013, these demonstrations against the destruction of Gezi Park in Istanbul were violently suppressed. 5 people were killed here, and though this tiny patch of greenery has survived, 244 protesters were given jail sentences last week.
And they said...
In May, the editor of one of Turkey's oldest newspapers published this front-page story alleging that Turkish intelligence had sent weapons in trucks to jihadist rebels in Syria. Can Dündar says the president's lawyers want him to serve 2 life sentences, with Mr. Erdoğan personally involved in his case.
He directly threatened me and said that he will pay for this, and accusing me being a spy and a treason. He said this was a treason and he will pay for it, and I will, what was the name? What was he said? I will not let you go, he said.
Is he like Vladimir Putin, do you think?
He wants to be. I mean, everything under control and no criticism at all.
Everything under control from this sparkling new presidential palace. Over 1,000 rooms, part Las Vegas casino, part neo-Ottoman fantasy, with guards here commemorating over 2,000 years of Turkish empires. Though the president has invited his critics to see for themselves that his toilet seats are not made of gold.
They invited us to palace to show the toilets.
Well, why didn't you go to the palace and find out?
I mean, this was the first time that a president invited me to his toilet, so it was not a good idea.
This is Bursa, the very first Ottoman capital and a stronghold of Erdoğan's Justice and Development Party, where we meet Bülent Arınç, Erdoğan's former confidant and deputy as Prime Minister, now desperately trying not to offend the president before elections in 3 days' time.
Ben eleştirilerin ne olduğu konusunda hiçbir şey söylemem ama
I wouldn't say anything about the criticisms of him, but everybody can be criticized. This includes presidents, political leaders and ministers. Nobody is above criticism, but I won't go into the details of the specific criticisms and what they mean in real terms. I'm not going into that.
Yesterday, Turkish police stormed an opposition media company using water cannon and pepper spray against protesters outside. Turkey now ranks 149th in the World Press Freedom Index somewhere below Zimbabwe. This is what happened this morning when journalists were told they had been sacked. One journalist was threatened with 5 years in jail after sending this one tweet criticising the dropping of corruption charges against Erdogan and others. That case was dropped, but Sedef Kabash says she still faces a possible 5 years for resisting police arrest.
What has this got to do with President Erdogan?
There might be some link, I would say.
But you don't know that for sure.
Everybody knows it for sure, but they always find a way to force the police to do things through police, to do things through some prosecutors, to do things through some media suppression.
Ben bütün gazeteciler için bütün bu suçlamaların
I wish all these accusations against journalists, God willing, will be proved wrong and they will be acquitted by the courts. But the legislation in Turkey works this way, against people who committed crimes outside their journalistic activity, and nobody has the right to complain about the judicial process.
Mevcut durum itibariyle kimsenin şikayet etme hakkı yok.
And which European leader would dare criticise Turkey's president now, given his vital newfound role in stemming the flow of refugees? No wonder publication of a European Commission report on freedom of expression here has been postponed.
Most of the media is under his control. The judges, the prosecutors under his control. And he controls everything. And he wants more now.
Mr. Erdogan's name isn't even on the ballot paper this Sunday. But if his party wins, he plans to extend his executive power even further. And if he does, this increasingly illiberal democracy could explode into civil unrest. Jonathan Rugman, Channel 4 News, Istanbul.